Thank you to our sponsors, Amazon, which visited me often during the pandemic, not by choice. I'm married. And also Boston Cultural Council for helping to put this show together. We'd like to welcome you to the episode of Artdacity, the road to BAMS. And we're going to explain exactly what that is in just a moment. As a matter of fact, on June the 11th, 2022, BAMS, a festival will be make its highly anticipated return to Franklin Park in Dorchester, Massachusetts. That's right, Dorchester. It's been 2 years since it last came through, which is due to the COVID-19 pandemic. But it was during the pandemic that Artdacity was created to continue engaging BAM's supporters in a largely virtual arts ecosystem. It's awesome, man. This episode comes full circle. That's right, 360 degrees with a conversation between four of the 2022 BAM Festival's performers, each lending their unique, should I say, our unique perspectives on our journey through the last 2 years leading up into this event. Uh, our, our panelists today consist of Paul Willis, who's a hip hop artist and DEI consultant, Naomi Westwater, singer, songwriter, and producer, associate director of Beats by Girls, and Ellie Pabon. She's a dancer, educator, and event producer. So let's jump right in. My name is Corey Manning, comedian by night, superhero by day. That's it. That's my bio. Thank you all for joining us for this exciting opportunity to engage the people who want to learn more about BAM Festival. Uh, so I want to jump right in. But let's keep it easy. Let me start off with a simple question. I'm going a little bit off script. Hope I don't get canceled. Favorite superhero? Let's start with Paul.
That's a tough one. That's a tough
See,
one because
that's why they
there's
got me
so
because I
many.
be asking the tough questions.
Look, there's so many to choose from, but I gotta represent, Black Panther, Chadwick Boseman. Have to, gotta go to Wakanda.
Wakanda forever, my brother. Wakanda forever. All right, Naomi, who's your favorite superhero?
Yeah, that's a hard one for me too. I mean, yes, Black Panther, absolutely. I tend to always kind of like what's happening with the villains though, and seeing what the villains are up to. They have like
Oh,
a more interesting backstory to me. So I kind of was always very curious about Thanos because he thinks he's doing something for the greater good. So yeah, I'm interested in what the villains have to say in their story.
Naomi, that answer makes me want to go way off of topic with follow up questions specifically about that. But I'm going to stay the task. I'm going to stay the task. Ellie, favorite superhero or villain
Well,
or villain?
I mean, uh, I'm just gonna go with what first came to mind because when I was a little girl, Wonder Woman was my girl, right?
Bam.
But then I saw the Wonder Woman movie that came out a few years ago, and I was a little disappointed.
You
Parts of
were.
it, but we'll have another conversation on another day. Yeah, I
Okay.
was disappointed, just a little bit.
So, so you're a Linda Carter fan. Is that what you're saying? The
That's my
the
girl.
one where she
That
spins
was my girl
around?
back in the day. Now, I'm not saying that that's my favorite of all time, but that's just what came to mind when you asked the question. So I'll just
I
stick to
got
that.
you. I got you. All right. Great, great. Thank you all so much for answering that question. As a comedian by night, superhero by day, that we have to have a few superhero questions thrown in and out of this as we go along. But let's get to it. And I'm gonna throw this first question out to Naomi. Uh, what excites you the most about returning to BAM Festival this year?
Oh,
What are
it's
you
the
looking forward to?
community. It's the community for sure. And I think it also is um, the theme is joy and we're going to be celebrating. And for all of us, it's just been really challenging last 2 years. And so the fact that this festival can happen again in Boston gives me hope and allows the community to come together and celebrate each other after 2 years of hardship. So that's what I'm looking forward to the most.
When most people think about or hear of a festival, uh, they don't think about community. They think about music. They think about just the entertainment parts of it. Why did you say community? Can you give a little description of what BAM Festival is like to those who may not have experienced BAM Festival before?
Well, I think it's community because it's a festival that is, for us by us. I think it's
Hmm.
community because it is really celebrating Boston art and music in a way that I have not experienced it being celebrated before. And for me as a musician, music is community. I always love it when I can collaborate and make music with other people instead of by myself. And that relationship of being on stage and performing with an audience, that is a community relationship. There is a feedback that's happening. So every aspect of it, I think, should be community focused. And I think the best events and the best festivals end up being community focused. So I'm excited to be a part of it this year, and excited, beyond me, that it's just returning to our community in general, and that it is going to be a really fun celebratory day.
Awesome. Paul, can you follow up that answer to that? What does community mean to you when you think about BAM Festival, or how would you describe BAM Festival to someone who's never been?
It's funny because I've never been. And
Oh, you
so
have? This is
I,
your first time?
yeah, this is my first time attending and being a performer. And so I remember Cat Morris's like second tweet ever about BAMS Fest. I grew up in Jamaica Plain. I was working on City Year in Boston before moving to Sacramento, California to start up a City Year chapter out there. And so I knew nothing
Wow.
about anything that was going on the West Coast when I moved, but I was really excited to kind of see that Boston, for the first time, had this black kind of music, art, this soul fest thing that was going on. And I remember replying to Kat's tweet saying, "How do I be a part of this?" And so from like 2015, I have been trying to find a way to get back. And throughout the years, I learned about the festival's focus on elevating the voices and the stories of local artists. And so I knew I'd have to move back home to be a part of it. And there was an opportunity to do that last year in August, and I had like just made it, to enter it, my art as a submission for the Versus or Vibes contest. I thought that might be the only chance I have at getting in, because I know that there are hundreds, if not thousands, of applications for performers. And so, actually winning that contest was incredible. And then having this opportunity to be there, it means everything because Boston is my home. And so when we talk about community, like my family is here, my mom, my sisters, my brothers, my friends who I grew up with, all of that. It's a really exciting moment to have this homecoming. So, yeah, it means everything in those ways.
Oh, that's great, man. Thanks for sharing that. And I got to go to you, Ellie. What's exciting to you about participating in Band Festival this year?
Well, there's a dance stage. Like I'm really excited just to go and learn from other people and just seeing the lineup of the amazing dancers and instructors that are going to be doing their thing there. So this is the first of I've been part of many festivals. I was also born and raised in Boston, and I've been part of like helping put on different festivals. And a few years ago, Kat approached Meadow Movements, which is a dance collective that I'm part of, about
Hmm.
maybe seeing if we wanted to be part of the BAMS Fest. And I was like, sure. I didn't even know what it was yet. Right. And then I
Right,
just
right.
was like, how did I not know about the BAMS Fest? But it makes me think about even before I was even born, back in the 60s and 70s. Yeah, I would hear my mom or my dad, who's a musician, he would talk about these events, these like live concerts happening at Franklin Park at the White Stadium, right? And I would see all
Hmm.
these pictures, and I'm like, wow, that's amazing. So it made me think of that when I first learned of BAMFest, and then on top of that, the fact that there is a stage dedicated just to dance, because it's always kind of like all together, right? So
Right.
that inspired a lot of other people to like focus on dance, which, you know, even being able to kind of be there and show our art and not just be like, oh, can you do it for free? Because majority of the time, dancers and dance instructors, for some reason, are like, oh, can you come perform? Oh, but by the way, can you volunteer your time? So I feel like there's a lot of respect for artists that BAMS Fest folks that are putting this festival together truly understand, and they're able to kind of like, you know, you guys have made sure that sponsors and people that are supporting the BAMS Fest understands the importance of artists and their time. So that's what I'm really excited about, taking classes from other dancers and also enjoying the music from all of the musicians that will be there.
Yeah, this is great. I'm glad we're having this conversation. Speaking of, you speak of community, because what I'm learning now and understanding even more so, even though I had some inkling of it before, but the similarities that we all have as artists and the struggles and the exciting things, the things that excite us are very similar, especially when you talk about people wanting you to donate your time to do stuff. And what I really appreciate about this festival is that they recognize that art, you know, it takes some commitment and sacrifice to do what we do, not to mention talent. And so that deserves some form of reward. So thank you for that. And it can be depressing sometimes when somebody asks you, can you come and do 45 minutes in my basement for my mother-in-law? Well, you got to be clean and we can't pay you. Like, no, I can't. That's not going to happen. But speaking of mother-in-laws, I mean, speaking of situations that have been difficult, uh, how did you maintain yourself during the pandemic in your art? I'm gonna start with you, Ellie, since you just came off. You did an excellent job. So, what are some of the things you did to relieve stress and make it through?
Well, I have my kids. I don't have kids. I'm not a mother, but I teach for Boston Public Schools, and I teach
Hmm.
dance. Uh, Currently and throughout the pandemic, I was teaching for at the Ellison Parks School in Mattapan, and so every day I was on Zoom with them. And so they helped me
Wow.
get through this. You know what I'm saying? Like I went on there. I've never taught online, and I had to teach myself how to teach the kids. We're talking 4-year-olds to like 8 or 9.
Really?
So I'm like, how am I going to teach 4-year-olds dance on? But we made it work. They made it work, and we did it together. And then I was also kind of teaching some other stuff virtually, so salsa for adults and things like that. And I did a lot of gardening. I had just bought my house right before the pandemic hit, and I have you know, a big, huge backyard. I was like, what can we do? You don't know what's going to happen with food in the future. Start gardening, vegetables, all this stuff. So really getting in touch with nature, going on walks, hiking, all those things that I had more time for, let's say, that I made more strategic time for because of pandemic. So, how about
What's
y'all?
in your
Huh? What was that?
what's in your garden right now? What's in your garden?
What's in my
What you
garden?
got? Yeah.
Well, I'm just starting for this year, but we usually do peppers, kale. We got lettuce, tomatoes, pumpkin. What else? Chives. I haven't done onions yet, but those are next. Garlic chives. What else? Oh, that didn't go so well. But squash. I have squash. Hmm.
Okay, you're gonna have to bring me a bag of some of those to the festival so I can bring home.
I
All right.
got you, Corey. I got you. Yes, I will.
Okay. Paul, how did you cope with the pandemic? Which I mean, yes, we're kind of still in. Hopefully, on the other
Yeah,
side.
yeah. I think the when you grow up and you've been faced with challenges your whole life, you know, something like the pandemic, it seemed like it was like another obstacle. Um, and because a lot of my work is in schools, it's in the community, I really kind of looked to the people to my left and to my right and said, like, how are we going to do this? And that's the same approach I've taken to all of sorts of challenges, you know, that I've seen in my life. So really kind of just started to get creative and put some plans together for mutual aid. Um, you know, looking for whether it's grant opportunities, things that we could create that added value. Folks started creating masks. We created marketplaces. Um, just all sorts of different ways to kind of help people sustain. I think me personally, I was in San Francisco. I was getting ready to perform when like the city was getting ready to shut down. And
Wow.
I remember driving home that night and then being on my couch for about 2 or 3 weeks, watch every Marvel movie I could. Um, and
That's
when I
wonderful.
realized, okay, this thing is here to stay, I said, okay, well, let me create a book of lyrics, and that could be a place to start. Um, let me see what else I can do. Can I, create a film, this documentary using my music from the album I had just released to kind of put a spotlight on the local community and the challenges that they were facing, whether it was COVID or gentrification and, job insecurity, health insecurity during this time. So I was able to, get some grant money and pour it really back into, local artists, local activists, residents, public housing. We created a scholarship fund for youth dancers whose families couldn't afford, the monthly lessons and that kind of thing. So, yeah, for me, it's about collective action. That's how we get through everything in our lives, and the pandemic was no different than that. And every time I've poured into the community, I've been able to receive a bunch of blessings tenfold. So, yeah, that's just my approach to everything, and it wasn't different with the pandemic.
Wow. Thanks for that, my brother. Appreciate that. Naomi, same question for you.
Yeah, it's my life is completely different than it was in March 2020. I don't live in the same place. I don't have the same job. So much of my life has changed. And a lot of it has changed for the better. So I think the pandemic for me just forced me to say, like, your 5 year, your 10-year plan, that's the right now plan. And so
Hmm.
that has been just kind of overwhelming, really, on top of, the grief and the sadness, and the isolation, just being like, wow, it was, the pandemic forced me to say, okay, I guess I'm going to be a freelance artist now and an educator. And the pandemic forced me to say, okay, I can't live in my basement apartment in Boston any longer because I'm going to go crazy. And I wrote a lot. I just was writing all the time because I couldn't perform. I wrote an album, writing a lot of poetry as
Oh,
well as songs. I'm planning on recording the album in the fall. So for me, it was just a time to really go inward. And in every single, part of my life, it was like, what's not working anymore? We gotta, fix it. It doesn't work for me to be living in a city, isolated and afraid to to leave the house. And also, I was in a basement apartment, there was no light, so I was like, this doesn't work, I gotta go. And a big blessing was I moved back to the Cape and lived with my parents for 4 or 5 months, and I haven't lived with them as an adult. um, and so it was really beautiful to just have some time with family that was like that. And Ellie, just like you, we bought a house. I've been gardening. I've been going for walks in nature. The whole album I'm working on right now is inspired by nature and getting out and gardening and just watching the world change so much. And my community, I think when everyone's going through it, you really see, like, who's a friend. And I think for me, coming out on the other side of it, I'm like, ooh, the people who are still in my life, these are real ride or dies. So just I think in general though, I'm trying to be gentle with myself and gentle with everybody. We're still going through it. I don't know how you grieve, all the millions of people who have died and all of the jobs that people lost. And I don't know how we can collectively grieve that. I can't even begin to comprehend that. So I'm trying to just be really gentle with myself and with others. I might not get to that email right away, and I'm not going to expect you to do that either. All those things that I feel like before, I think we need to go a little bit slower than we were going before and just be patient with each other. So that's kind of how I'm trying to cope with the current, situation of where the pandemic's at today.
You talk about identifying instead of comparing. I purchased we purchased a new home, moved into it just before the pandemic. I was doing a lot of online, not necessarily teaching, but online performances, really, and identifying and connecting with family and stuff like that. All that stuff happened during the pandemic. What I really found during the pandemic was I thought that I needed to perform or create opportunities to bring community together online and laugh. Like I really felt that way. Like laughter is the best medicine. And during the pandemic, the triple pandemic between the COVID-19, the observation of the racial things that were going on in America, and the economic pandemic that we went through, I felt the desire to make people laugh, to get them out of that space. But then what I realized is, and I didn't realize this until I got back on stage for the first time, is how much I needed it. So it was even me giving of myself and helping people to laugh. What I realized is that I did that because I needed it, and I didn't realize it in full force until I got on stage and was able to perform. I hear that mirrored and often with all the things you three have been saying. It's been incredible. I'm happy to be a part of this. I'm looking forward to the festival, man. What with your passion, your unique use of your passion? How are you going to bring that passion and show that passion at the BAMS Festival, at the Boston Artist Festival? How are you going to do that? I'm sorry, I just threw that out. Anybody can answer it, but I can pick somebody.
I was just gonna say, I'm just gonna go have fun, right? And appreciate being around a lot of different people. Appreciate seeing people that maybe I haven't seen in a long time. Meeting new people, meeting y'all in person,
Yep.
and just bringing that. I'll be teaching in the dance stage, but it's not about, all right, you have to do this and this. It's more like, all right, let's do this and let's do it together and like let's dance and have fun, versus this is a 45 or minute class. What was that, Corey?
You said you're going to be teaching dance? I thought you're just going to be like dancing. You're going to be teaching.
I'm going to be dancing and teaching people dance. So
wow.
Yeah, so Latin. So we're talking salsa, merengue, bachata, maybe a little bit of dembow. I don't know, a little bit of everything. And so, I'll be dancing, but people are dancing with me. So that's how I roll. Like, I'm dancing, you're dancing. You don't want to sit up, you want to sit on your chair, move those shoulders, you can do it, so kind of just bring that positivity and that everybody can do it, right? Even if you can't walk, you can still move. There's people who can't, but, for the most part, people that will be there, hopefully will be excited to dance with me and all the others that will be in the dance stage.
I got shoulders, so I can move them.
Shoulders. That's right, Paul.
That's the move right there. That's the shoulder. If you can do the shoulders, you're good to go. That's all you used to do.
Exactly.
This the move right here. This right here. Hey. So Paul, what about you? How you bring your passion to the BAMS Festival this year? What do you?
Honestly, I was having this conversation with a friend of mine about how we rarely get to be focused right here in the present. And so that's what I want to do in that moment, is to be really present. Everything from just the audition process, meeting a ton of musicians, a ton of artists, to putting my band together, to the way that the band is formed now. Like, everything was done in community. And so I trust my people and I trust the process. And so in that moment, when we finally get to hit the stage and show up, decked out shirts, the whole nine, I just want to be present and to experience that kind of joy, because that's going to be a really special moment. So that's how I'm going to bring my passion to that space. We're going to celebrate art. We're going to celebrate community, and I just want to be present to enjoy that.
So you got your outfit picked out yet?
Oh yeah, we designed shirts. They got the BAMS Fest colors. I'm excited for folks.
Hey, Naomi, how are you bringing your passion to the BAMS Festival?
Yeah, I think a couple things. One is because of the pandemic, taking a break from performing made me realize that performing is stressful for me. And coming back into performing again, I have really said, I don't want it to be stressful. It's when I'm actually on stage, it's so exciting, but leading up to it, all of the organizing that goes into a performance is stressful. And so I'm trying to leave that part, which means that it allows me to be more myself and less of a perfectionist on stage, and really just leaning into the fact that it's a moment in time. It's not supposed to be perfect. It's supposed to be about community, and it's supposed to be, me offering my voice and my songwriting and my storytelling to the community. So trying to lean into that. And I also think for me, I'm more of an Americana artist, and that's not always music that you hear in Black spaces, even though Americana music, blues, rock music is Black music, and is created from Black people. So I'm always excited to show up and say, hey, this music that's more folk, that's more bluesy, that's more rock, Black people make this music too, and we always have, and it's always been a part of our history. So I'm excited to add that part, my voice to the stage, and to hear everyone else's voices as well.
I think that's an important point. Naomi, that's a really important point. Like when I'm, well, at least for the BAMS Fest specifically, I want to make sure that the audience knows the history of these dance forms that they're learning, because there's misconceptions about certain styles and where they came from. So I think for me, it's not only you're doing a movement or you're doing this dance style, but just a little bit of information about where it came from, So I'm glad that you said that, Naomi.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things to me when I got in, I was like, who's, similar to you, Paul, I'm like, who's going to be in the band? And the first person that popped into my head was a local folk artist, Grace Giverts. And she plays the banjo, and she's Black, multiracial, and I was like, I have to have Grace playing banjo on the stage, because, a lot of people don't realize that the banjo is an African instrument. Because the majority of people you see playing it now, yes, it's an African instrument. It's based on a gourd. And so, I think it's really important for us to reclaim that. And, anybody can play the banjo, but we need to understand the history of that, and understand that the history of folk music and the history of all popular music in the United States comes from Black people. So that's really important, I think, on this stage, and in general on any stage that I'm on, because often in the more folk Americana scene, I am definitely a minority. So, I think it's important for us to realize that there's this history, this call and response history, this rhythmic history, the history with certain instruments that are very, very Black, and part of it, our heritage, and that all, like I said, all genres of popular music are rooted in Blackness in the United States.
That's
Yep.
crazy. I did not
Yeah, y'all are
know
my
that.
people for real.
Oh,
Yeah, like
man,
that teaching that history is part of like every set that I do. So I'm glad that y'all said that.
see how we. This is beautiful. The only thing I know about the banjo is deliverance, and that's not a good thing to associate the banjo with. Now that you telling me that it has African ancestry, I now want to go now and like learn how to play the banjo, like for real, for real. That's crazy. That's crazy. Thank you. And Paul, I don't. You mentioned you do a little educating yourself. I don't know if there's anything that how hip hop in any way, shape, or form could be an educational tool. There's no way you can use hip hop to teach. I mean, come on, man.
Yeah, no,
Seriously.
of course not. No, it's funny. It's funny you say that because I just left the hip hop education conference at Harvard like about a week ago. But yeah,
Oh,
no, hip hop is
time out, dog. Hold up, Paul. Excuse me. I apologize for cutting you off. Did you just say? I don't want you to just ease past. Did you? Now, you hear how you just ease that in there? I just left a hip hop educational workshop at Harvard. Whatever, man. And the fact that
yeah,
they're actually doing that at Harvard. Now, I can remember growing up. I'm not going to date myself. But I can remember growing up and trying to teach and offering to teach, doing a presentation in school about DJing and mixing because back then they thought a scratch is when you take the needle and just go across the record. And it was like, why do black people mess their records up like that? I'm like, it's not like that. So full
it's
circle.
not.
Go ahead, Paul.
It's not. It's not. It's so deep. Um, Yeah, no, it's so deep. So shout out to Aisha Upchurch, who's an amazing dancer. And she's running the hip hop kind of, it's like a graduate studies program through the school of education at Harvard. Shout out to Obasi Shah, who was a student who, when he was earning, I think, his master's degree, turned in an album for his like final like thesis and paper instead of like turning in like a term paper he handed in like an album. So like folks don't realize that Ninth Wonder, Bun B, there's a whole bunch of other kind of hip hop academics. One of the projects I was working on in California was creating a teacher credentialing pathway for hip hop artists to become career technical educators in arts, media, and entertainment. But yeah, now hip hop is one of the most transformative tools for equity and justice that we have in this world today. It's an energy, right? And it shifts every single space and room that it walks into. And so, to this point about kind of recognizing where that comes from, you go all the way back to the griots of West Africa who would travel from village to village, sharing stories and poems and traditions, not only through the oral tradition, but through the drums as well. In fact, when they, enslaved peoples and brought them here and were on plantations, splitting people up by language, facial features, cultures, etc., they banned the djembe because even though folks couldn't speak the same language, they could speak through the drums. And so, like, we have steel drums because of that, right? And a lot of folks don't understand that like hip hop comes from that lineage. When we talk about Negro spirituals and gospel music, jazz, blues, rock and roll, right? Like all of this stuff, folk music, all of it comes through that same like lineage of resistance from oppression. And hip hop is all about authenticity and empowering the individual to express themselves. Um, in whatever manner or form that they see fit, whether it's graffiti or making the beats or spinning on their head, like that expression is the thing that really endears it, to communities all over the world. And so, um, yeah, there's a deep history, but also there's this network, there's this present day network of hip hop educators who are also community builders and even cultural ambassadors. There's a next level program through the State Department for the United States. They take like hip hop crews, like an MC, a DJ, a B boy, or a B girl, right? And they go out into the world, and they'll travel places like Cambodia, Morocco, France. Like they'll go to these places and they'll have these like hip hop cultural exchange programs. And so the impact of the culture hasn't even been measured. There's no way to like calculate how many classrooms, how many young people hip hop serves, or anything like that. And so I just carry that energy with me wherever I go, whether it's with 826 Boston, where I'm at, three different high schools, the Burke, the John D. O'Brien, the Edward M. Kennedy, or if I'm like traveling, across the country and doing shows or workshops or even Zoom calls. Those have just been ways I've been, trying to educate people about the culture and its impact and really what it means to bring, those kind of spaces and communities together.
Oh, that's the for those that might just be tuning in or somehow ran across this episode of Artdacity, the road to BAMS, which is going down on June the 11th, 2022, in Franklin Park, right in Dorchester, Massachusetts, and have an outstanding panel together today for this episode. Paul Willis, who you just heard from, hip hop artist, uh, Naomi West, Naomi Westwater, singer, songwriter, and producer, and Ellie Pavon, dancer, educator, and event producer. And it just it's crazy. Like hearing everything you all are saying now, it makes me want to be more engaged with what we're talking about. Um, Now we're going to take this opportunity right now to jump right into our soul bowl, so to speak. Uh, if you know what I mean. With Soul Bowl, we get a chance to make it more of an interactive questionnaire where we all get a chance to ask each other questions. It's not just me taking the lead and asking questions. So I want to open up anybody who wants to go, just go, or we just go with the flow. All right. Who would like, anyone like to start? And everybody's involved in this. You can
Yeah,
ask me a question.
I can hop right in. This is something I love
Okay.
to ask rappers, but just like creatives in general. Because we all, get our inspiration from different places, but I'm curious, uh, what are your like top three books that you might be reading right now? Or even if you're not reading something right now, something you're like, I gotta pick that up. I want to check that out. So what are your like top three so I can take some notes and like read what y'all are reading? Because this conversation is awesome.
Well, Paul, I'm challenging myself to try and read 100 books this year. So I've been reading. I've been
Wow.
reading a lot. um, the first book that comes to mind, mainly I'm reading fiction and poetry, is The Sentence by Louise Ettridge. I believe that's how you say her last name. And she's a native writer, and she weaves in this beautiful story of fiction with a little bit of magical realism. The main character serves a sentence in jail and then goes and works at a bookstore that's haunted. And I don't know, something about just reading really good writing is amazing. So check that out. It's a wonderful story, and the story comes into the pandemic. So she talks about what's happening, in our day as well. And then I've been reading a lot of Mary Oliver poetry because, kind of back to what Ellie was saying, I need to connect to nature in order to stay sane. And Mary Oliver, she died a few years ago, but she was a local poet based on the Cape, wrote a lot about walking around in nature, and I find that work really inspiring. So I've been reading a lot of that. And you said three. I got to think about I've been reading a lot, but I don't. I'll think about the third one while other people talk. But those are my first two for you.
All good. All
Well,
good.
I'm
Thank you.
I'm not currently reading it, but I have to mention it because it is the very first book that I felt I actually was reading it for reading it and really understanding, and couldn't put the book down.
Wow.
Asada. Asada. Um, and for so many reasons. There was like, I was working at a college, Berkeley Hill Community College, maybe like 10, 15 years ago. And I bought like 20 copies of that book to give to every single, um, well, mostly all Black and Latina students um, specifically girls. So I gave them all these copies and I said, read this book, tell me what you think. I'll give you like a month. They were back in like a week, you know? And I'm like, yes, because that's what happened to me when I was like, what? And what? What? And it helped me kind of just be able to ask certain questions. And that book kind of opened a lot of things for me. And it was when I was part of this amazing group called Reflect and Strengthen. And it basically, like I said, opened up a lot for me. And I think the other book that I have in my possession, I will just have to say, I feel like, why haven't I read it yet? But War Against All Puerto Ricans, Revolution and Terror in America's Colony. For many, many reasons, I need to read that book. It's by Nelson Dennis. And yeah, those are the two books that came to mind. The third is one that I just read by Dr. Zendi. And it's about just race and education. And I forgot the name of it right now. I don't know why, but it's going to come to me. And I had to read it for work, which is interesting. But like it helps. I was like overwhelmed reading it right from the beginning. I'm like, I can't take this all right this second. I'm gonna have to like take it little by little because of all of the things that have been happening for a long time, but people are just started seeing it when, you know, a couple years ago, you know, the racial tension. I'm like, oh, so now people are seeing it because it's been there. It's been there. So that book really starts kind of naming all of these things that have been happening in our neighborhoods all over the United States. And I will look for that title and I'll give it to you, Paul, because if you haven't read it, it's one to read for sure.
For me, other than comic books, when I get a chance to, I just started reading this book by Tome and Yemi. I know I'm butchering her name, but it's called Children of Blood and Bone, and it's a fantasy book about it's people of African descent. It is what the book is about. It's about people of color, but they have magical powers, and they're going through this hierarchy where the people who used to have these powers are outcast now, and they started to develop this power. But it's a very good book. One of those ones you can't put down. Unfortunately, I don't have all the time that I want to have to read it. And then the other book that I'm reading, the only two, is The Art of War. Now, I know you're like, why are you reading? Maybe you might not be, but I'm reading The Art of War not because I want to learn how to go into combat. I'm reading The Art of War because I'm working on a book called The Art of Comedy, and I want to see how the two can mirror or be parallel to each other in my writing. And it's actually it's opened my eyes to a lot of stuff. So those are the
That's
two
dope.
out of the three that you asked for. Great
Yeah.
question.
Yeah, I think there's some really great parallels too to even some of the stuff I'm kind of reading right now. Just reread a friend of mine's book called Heroic by Avery Wright. He's a super dope MC, author, playwright. I think he's like the next Lin-Manuel Miranda. But it's a young adult superhero novel that he transformed into a comic too, and it's about this kid who kind of loses his master and has to navigate a world where saving people is against the law. So the more good he
Wow.
does, the worse things become for other people, and he's battling with like his own depression and mental illness and trying to figure out how do I do the right thing. It's like a really cool read. So that's one. The other book I'm reading right now, it's not currently out, but it will be out in like a couple of weeks, I think. I've been working with a group of, high school students from all over the city. They make up 826 Boston's Youth Literary Advisory Board. So these are like paid positions where kids can like work on their writing. And so I'm like their staff person. Every Friday we meet. It's really awesome to kind of get to build with them. But they just finished this book called The Other Side of the Hill, where they talk about kind of growing up in different neighborhoods all over Boston and providing this other perspective that people don't normally get a chance to see when they think about Boston. You know, everyone kind of knows like the movies and things that they see on TV, but through this writing and this interactive reading experience, you'll get to kind of see their writing. You'll get to hear from their family in these recorded interviews. You'll get music that's like playlists for their neighborhood. It's like a really cool experience. So I encourage people to check that out. And then I think the third book, because I just recommended this to some teachers, was Stamped by Kendi, but it's the high school version, the one that was rewritten by Jason Reynolds. And you know, when folks are thinking about just like the history of racist ideas and where they come from, and you're trying to like figure out how do you have these conversations with the next generation that's coming up, that book is an amazing place to start. And so, yeah,
What's the name of
those
that
three
book
books
again?
are the ones that I recommend. It's called Stamped. Yeah,
Stamp.
it's
Okay.
a high school adaptation from Kendi's book that's Stamped from the beginning, and that book is like
Mhm.
hundreds of pages. It's like super fat, but like this one is like a little bit easier to read, more digestible, and it goes like straight to the point because of you know, Jason Reynolds' style for that. I know Kendi kind of bothered Jason Reynolds for a few months to get him to even consider rewriting the book, and it came out amazing. So for folks who haven't had a chance to check it out, those were some ones.
Kendi, that was the author.
Awesome.
My bad, Dr. Kendi. Um, the book was How to Be an Anti-Racist. Have y'all read that book? Okay. So it was very overwhelming,
Yeah.
but not because I didn't know stuff that he was writing about. It was more like, wow, he's throwing it all in. It's all in. So if you don't know, now you know, right? That kind of book. Um, yeah.
That book was so helpful to me because I've read so much race theory that just focused on race before, and he was like, no, it's intersectional. We have to talk about class, we have to talk about education, all these other things that are, you know, connected. Which was actually going to be my question for you all, was just kind of, you know, thinking about yourself as an artist, but all the other identities that you are, and how do you kind of balance and juggle, and let those things also intersect when it comes to your artwork. You know, because sometimes it's like, you know, I feel like I'm bringing a whole crew, all the different identities I represent. And sometimes I want that in my artwork. And sometimes I just want to show up and be me and not have to represent, you know, all of my ancestors. So I'm wondering how you deal with all your different identities and balance that with your artwork and integrate that with your artwork.
I just don't try anymore. I don't. I think for a long time, like, you know, these people know me as a singer songwriter. These people know me as a MC rapper. These people know me as this. These people know me as this. And like, I'm like, well, what am I? Who am I? Right. And I'm like, jack of all trades, master of none. That's what I used to say a lot. Right. And then I'm like, stop doing that. Stop doing that, because all of these things are you. Um, you know, you were born in Boston, but you rep Boricuen all day, every day. Boricuen is Puerto Rico. Um, and yes, I am light skinned. Puerto Ricans come in all shades, right? Um, or I'm an educator, or I just like to do this. I just like, so I think that I just don't try anymore. And I just, whatever is coming at you is what's going to come at you. And I try not to control it anymore. I think that being in different spaces, and I think being in different spaces is like one thing, like, okay, who am I going to bring? But I think working with kids has really made me realize, just be your full self, whatever that is. No more F bombs, can't swear anymore in my daily life, because if I do, then I'm going to swear at school. Not good, right? I need to be respectful to everyone, like all the things, positive things. that I have to just bring to the kids when I'm teaching them every day. It's kind of like that's how it's been. It's kind of transcended in other spaces, and not being afraid of who you are. If you laugh loud, or if you are quiet, or sometimes I am quiet, sometimes I'm not. And so I just kind of, I guess I just let that go and don't think about it anymore. You know what I mean? I don't know if that answers your question, but how about you,
Yes,
Paul?
Yeah,
definitely.
it
Definitely
seems like
answered for
you've
me.
just, yeah, go ahead, Corey. I was just saying that to Ellie, it just seems like you've given yourself the freedom and permission to just be yourself, and that's pretty awesome. But I don't want to cut you off, Corey.
No, no, no. I was just saying the same thing. I was saying the same thing. It was beautiful. It was well put.
And I think that's what I'm trying to teach my kids, that it's okay to be you, whatever you are, whatever you want to bring, but bring yourself with respect, with, all of these things about human interaction. And, you think as a dance teacher, oh no, you're only supposed to teach dance and that's it. Please, that's the last part of what I do with the kids. And it's really up to us, like, what do we want our future to look like? We got to look to the kids. What are you
Mm.
doing with the kids? How are you interacting with any kids that you're around with, right? And just, bringing positivity is like number one, even if you're having a bad day, you know.
Yeah,
So
I think
for
for me, uh, my blackness is something I carry with me everywhere, and so I totally understand that feeling of just like, when do I get to be myself? And I also understand that, like, every time I walk into a space and I show up and the energy shifts because I'm in the room, um, that I am black, I am this, I'm all of these, like, labels and categories. And for a lot of folks, it, whatever ideas or, just preconceived, prejudices that they might have had about black people before, they will try to, like, put you in a box. Like, folks will meet me when I perform at, like, an open mic or at a show somewhere, and now I'll never be anything but a rapper to them, right? Or like my kids at school, they're like, "Oh yeah, you're Mr. Paul. You're like our not like our teacher, but like you're this educator from campus. Like you're this. You can't be cool. You can't rap. What are you talking about?" Like, it blows their mind, and I grab the mic and I do my thing. And the same thing when I'm in, like, a corporate boardroom, right? Or like in a nonprofit, more like professional space. Folks then they learn about how my creative side, my community in this art space, then goes to really support the work that I'm doing in those spaces too. And it, like, blows their mind. And I'm just like, I can't wear a mask around y'all. It's too hard to code switch. This is just who I am and how I'm showing up. And y'all are gonna have to deal with that. And I feel like, like you, Ellie, I move a lot of respect. I try to be humble in all of these spaces that I'm in, but I also recognize that, my voice, my perspective, it matters. It's important. And so I speak up. I have to say the things that may make people uncomfortable, because I'm calling on them to be better. I'm challenging them to think differently, to see option and opportunity in places where maybe they didn't see those things before. And so, yeah, I mean, that's kind of how I think about that question now. The other way I think about that question, though, too, is when I consider intersectionality, and I realize that I am in a much higher kind of place than some other folks, right? Who may be just not seen, overlooked, or not heard in spaces. So I recognize that my voice is, for often for others, it's a conduit. It's a gateway. I can elevate, other voices that typically aren't heard.
mm,
Whether that's, black and brown people from the, queer and trans community, whether that's, women, whether that's children, whether whoever, right? And women aren't separate from the LGBTQ community. I just want to make that very clear. But I think depending on different spaces and when I recognize like where the power exists in the room, and I see that there are some people who may not understand or may not think that they have, that power in that space, then I try to jump right in to elevate those folks. Um, because I think that's just an important, thing for folks to feel included. Sometimes folks need, a champion or an advocate, in those spaces. And so, I try to make room for everybody and create experiences. A lot of my music doesn't play in like bars and clubs. It's not meant for that. And so when we think about community events or my own kind of creative events that I throw, we're trying to find ways to, build these bridges and bring folks together from all sorts of backgrounds. But I have to be very cognizant of my own identity and then find other people that I can partner with to say, hey, like, I'm not the leader in these other communities, right? But how do we bring folks together? So I look for those artists, those activists, those organizers who are like-minded with me, who are trying to find those bridges, and then we create space together. Um, but yeah, those are just some of the like principles that I move with my day to day.
Hey, that's it. Again, I keep hearing these parallels in the conversations that we're having. For me, in bringing my whole self, that's one of the first things that uh, veteran comedians would tell new comedians is bring yourself to the stage. And early on, you don't know what that is. You don't know what that means because you really don't know, uh, artistically speaking, what your whole self is. And I used to try to separate being a comedian and being a superhero. Like those are two different lifestyles. And when I started to embrace it, even when I decided to have the moniker comedian by night, superhero by day, I often got pushback from people saying that it was too confusing. But at the same time, I was like, but that's who I am. I do both. I do the comedy, but also do the social justice work, facilitating workshop, substance abuse prevention, bullying, all that stuff I do during the day. And I actually bring those skills that I have as a comedian into the work that I do during the day because that's the best way to. Laughter is one of the best ways to teach because you remember something that's funny more so than you will anything else. And that's why a lot of commercials are, if you notice, most of them are humorous. And so what I began to do, and I'm to that point now, and I actually worked on a one man show where I'm able to embrace all of those skills and bring all of it into one aspect. It's kind of like my own thesis, my own lived thesis. It's not an album. It's actually a stage performance where I bring everything, all my collective knowledge and skills to the stage and present it because I that's something I always wanted to do with my comedy. Also, I mean, I go for laughs. That's the hard part. Like you go for laughs. So I can't break down the joke or how I used to dream about being white. I got so bad I would lay outside in the dark under a full moon and try to get lighter. I can't break that down to show how racism sparked that emotion in me to want to do something like that. But with this performance, I can do that. So all this to say is like it's hard to find out what once you have a skill. Once I found out what my passion is and what my skills are, it was hard for me to embrace the fact that it's okay to bring all of me to the situation, to the environment. And you're gonna have some people who like you, you're gonna have some people who don't, but you have to embrace the ones that love you and not get caught up so much on those that don't. So thank you for those quick. This is awesome, man. This is y'all gonna make me cry. I didn't know. See, if I'd have known this, I would have took a shower today if I'd have known this was gonna be this good.
Yeah, you,
Uh,
Corey. You know how you said you like about wanting to be lighter, right? Like that we
Yes.
were just talking about. So all of my
Yeah.
life, like not all of my life, but when I was younger, being the lightest skinned child in the classroom, I would always
Uh-huh.
rep my Puerto Rico t-shirts. So everybody knew I was Puerto Rican and not white. Isn't that something? I was like, no, I don't know why. I don't know why this feels like, but I don't want you to call me white because I'm not white. I am Puerto Rican,
Mm.
right? So I used to rock that. And then obviously I kind of like let that go. But you start thinking back, like, why did I do certain things when I was younger? And I don't know why I pinpointed to that. Maybe it was because people were calling me something that I wasn't, and I really was like really
Hmm.
proud of like my family and my background, that I didn't want anyone to take that away from me. So I don't know why, it made me think of that, Corey, when you were just talking about your one man play and bringing all your things together. It's like, wow, that's so interesting. I didn't want to put it in nobody else's box, right, Paul, like you said before, but I'll put myself in that Puerto Rican box, right? Because there's so many boxes just within there. But anyway, that's what made me think about that.
So, Ellie, do you have any a question
You
for
know,
us that you want to ask of us?
I would like to know, where is your lineage from? What is your ancestry that you know of, if you know?
I can finally answer that
Yes.
because I didn't know. I didn't know half of it for like, oh, the first 34 years of my life. So I knew my family was from Jamaica because my grandma, my mom, my older sister, all born in Kingston, family on the north part of the island, St. Anne, near Claremont, right? Like that kind of area and region. But there was no father's name on my birth certificate, and so I had no clue. And like my brothers and sisters, we all have like different dads. And so I just didn't know, for the longest time. But I had people coming up, you Somalian? Are you Eritrean? Are you Ethiopian? And I took a DNA test finally. Somebody gifted it to me last year, and I found out I am 50% Ethiopian. Because the Jamaican heritage is all broken down, you know what I'm saying, because of the, slavery and all this stuff. So that's all broken down in a lot of different things. But when I saw 50% Ethiopian, I was like, wait a minute. Like, that means that my dad, his parents, they're like, that's like an unbroken, like, chain of Ethiopians. I need to, like, plan a trip. I got to go to East Africa. What's up? Like, I got to find a way to get out there. Um, but yeah, I like am just coming into that knowledge for about a year, and so now I'm like eating all the food. I'm trying to learn as much of the language as I can learn. Yeah, I'm just trying to do my research and my history so that when it's time to go, I'll be prepared to go.
Wow.
Thanks for asking this question. I'm excited. First, I'll just say right behind me, these are my ancestors here. So I keep an altar with pictures of them. And I identify as Black multiracial. So my mom is white and my dad's Black. And it's been really interesting learning about my history because there's just so much privilege from my mom's side of the family. But my dad is Bayesian. His family is from Barbados. And his dad was born and raised in Barbados, and his mother, her parents were born and raised in Barbados. And my grandfather was one of 11 and the oldest of 11. So we go down to Barbados still, and I have family down there. And it's just like really wonderful to be able to go back there. And, that's always been something very special because so many Black Americans don't have that lineage, that place where they know they can go back to. And so there's something really special about going back to Barbados and having this connection with my family who still lives there and that heritage. And then my mother's father, both his parents came over from Scotland. And I still have a couple relatives that we're in touch with in Scotland. And my mother's mother, her family has been over here for a really long time. I think right after the Mayflower they came over. So I'm currently working on a song. It's not finished yet, but the lyrics are, I am descendant of colonizers and I am the colonized. And I'm really trying to work on how do I work with both of that history. And just that it's a heavy song, so I'm spending a little bit of time on it and then I have to put it away. But that's something I've been sitting on for a while. It's just kind of, how do I wrestle with both of this? Both of this is in my past. Yeah. So that's where my family's from.
Nice. I have a bunch of stuff about like waters and like travel, just like in terms of subject matter. A bunch of friends and I, we got together because we were all having this conversation right here. And so we put out a song called Spirits of the Atlantic, talking about like the slave rebellions and resistances. There's over 400, throughout the course of history that like never get taught in schools. So we wrote this song specifically about that. And same thing, like write a couple lines, then I got to put this away and like take care of myself before I go back to that because it's heavy stuff.
Paul, I would love to hear that because Westwater, that's so that is my mother's name. And there is a place in Scotland called Westwater where my family is from. And one of the things that has always been interesting to me that connects both lineages is that my heritage is, they're island people. Scotland's an island, Barbados is an island, and my parents raised me on Cape Cod. So there's like this big kind of water aspect to my heritage. So I'd love to hear that, Paul.
Nice.
Yeah, it's on Spotify. I'll send it.
Yes, please. I for me, that just like right there says it all in terms of like my ancestors are colonizers and colonized. So like that's Puerto Rico in a nutshell. So Paul, I do need to do my ancestry DNA thing because I really am interested in finding out what percentages of what. Like, because in Puerto Rico, it's not only Spain, Taino, and Bantu people. We're talking Germany, Germans. Like, there's like, from Amsterdam, there's so many Italians and lots of migration through that little island that who knows? Do I even have, Spanish or not? Ancestry, like, who am I? I don't know. Right now, I know that my family is from Puerto Rico. That's what I know. So I'm interested in doing that DNA thing, and also I do wrestle a lot with the whole idea of like who am I really, like like if I'm talking about this part of Puerto Rico and we're colonized or whatever, but like still my ancestors are the ones who did that. So like I don't know. It's kind of like all over the place. So I think for me is I'm on that next path of like, all right, where's my lineage for real from? Because who knows? Maybe it's Scotland. Who knows? Right?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm from the South, originally from the South, moved to Boston, 2000. And you can thank me for all the championships that have come across since I've moved here. I think I've been the lucky charm. Thank you. I'll take that. But I mean, I'm still trying to figure out my lineage. It's kind of the same way you are, Ellie. And I do know for sure that my dad has told me. My dad is from Michigan, from the Michigan area, and his great grandmother. I mean, his grandmother was 100% Indian, and on my mother's side, her grandmother was half Native American. So, but again, I need to do my ancestry to look deep and further into that. But This has been amazing. This has been more than I really expected. I'm gonna be honest with you. Not saying I had low hopes for you. I'm just saying, like, the conversations have just been incredible. So thank you all for joining us and bringing some light to several topics that we have going on. And can you please make sure I get your contact information, because I have some follow up questions to the answers that you gave. Can you guys want to share what you got coming up next? I forgot to ask that question. I'll start with you, Paul.
Plug. Here we go. I am re-releasing my album Wonderland, not as a deluxe edition, but as a teacher's edition. So it's
Yeah.
100% clean. We added about 3, 4 new tracks. There's a mini curriculum, and at BAMS Fest, we'll be able to package it with like the shirt, lyrics, album art, all that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, folks can get really excited about that. We're also launching the Hip Hop is Fine Art campaign this summer. And so I'm excited for folks to really explore just that idea and that concept with me over the next few years. I think hip hop can exist in that fine art space and should be elevated and treated as such in museums with the ballet, the symphony orchestra, all that kind of stuff. And so looking to do that here in Boston and all over the country as well. But look out for the Hip Hop is Fine Art campaign and the re-release of my album Wonderland. And y'all can follow me. It's real easy. I haven't had a cool rap name since sixth grade when I was hypotenuse. But, but on everything, my Instagram, Facebook, Gmail, Cash App, Venmo, it's all Paul Willis is hip hop. Real simple. Paul Willis is hip hop. Yeah.
Naomi?
Yeah, well, I'm going to be at BAMS, so everybody come out to that because that's going to be very fun. But next week, I'm going to be releasing a single called Gemini. I primarily am an Americana artist, but I occasionally like to dabble in electronic pop. So that is an electro pop that I mixed and mastered myself. So I'm excited about that. And I recorded a music video for it too that I edited. So that's coming out in a couple weeks. So Gemini, that'll be out. And then I have a bunch of fun shows. Some of them are announced, some of them aren't, but I'll be bopping around Massachusetts, New England this summer. And then the other thing I wanted to plug is I am an associate director at Beats by Girls Global and have just launched a Beats by Girls Boston chapter. Beats by Girls is working on the gender gap in music and technology and music production. So we're doing a bunch of workshops and courses this year. A lot of them at the Record Co. for youth and for adults, focused on women and gender expansive people to teach them about music tech and music production. So go check out Beats by Girls Boston on Instagram or beatsbygirls.org to learn more about that. That's going to be free programming that's open to the public. And I am Naomi Westwater on all of the social channels and music channels. So you can catch me there.
Dope. Thank you, Naomi. Ellie.
Yes. So,
where can we find you?
This summer, other than in my garden, I will be, so I produce events, outdoor dance events, mostly Latin. And I'll be one of the dance hosts for the Tito Puente Latin Music Series, which is basically once a week on a Thursday night, different parts of Boston, different parks, and it's just live music, and I'm getting people dancing. That's really all I'm doing and having fun. And then there is an event that I do that I actually produce with Meta Movements, which is the Dancing on the Road Latin series, and that's going to be at Assembly Row in Somerville. And that's going to be every other Friday starting July 8th. We're going to start with having a live band, but then every other week we'll just have like different amazing DJs from the Boston area. And I, along with some other Meta Movements dancers, will be teaching different Latin dance styles as well as leading dance lines and just dancing with people and having a good time outside, and really just just enjoying being outdoors and dancing together. So those are the two things I'm going to plug for now, but you can check out all of our events at metamovements.com. Metamovements.com. That's the easiest thing. I'm also on Facebook, Ellie Pavon. Instagram, which is at Lady Ellie Pavon. Yeah, I think that's how much I be on Instagram. Anyway,
I was going to say that.
metamovements.com for all the events, and look me up on Facebook, Eli Pabong, if you wanted to send me a quick message. And
Awesome.
that's it. That's all I
Well,
got.
you can. That's more than enough. That's not all. That's a lot. And I'm definitely coming out to one of those Thursday nights.
Yes.
If it's not the third Thursday, because on the third Thursday, I host a comedy show at Vincent's Nightclub in Somerville. We actually be down there on the 19th, so on the third Thursday of the month. Stand-up comedy series. I will personally be performing in Springfield on what month is this? May. This is May 21st. I'll be in Springfield, Massachusetts. You can find out more about that, and also my trip to California. I'll be at the Laugh Factory in July the 10th to be exact. And you can go to my website, which is CoreyManning.com. That's COREY Manning. No relation to Eli, unless they used to own my ancestors. So yeah, you can definitely go there. On Instagram, it's Corey Manning. On Twitter, it's at Corey Manning. On Facebook, it's the Corey Manning. But if you want to just save time, you can either go to my website or you can just Google me. I'm Googleable. That means you're able to Google me. Yo, this has been great. Shout out to my fellow panelists, Paul Willis, Naomi Westwater, Ellie Pambon. I knew I was gonna Ellie Pambon and everybody else who helped to make this thing. Pambon. Thank you. See, Pabon.
Yeah.
Pabon.
Yeah.
We'll take two. And the wonderful dancer, educator, and all around great person, as well as event producer, Ellie Pabon. I messed it up again, didn't I? I hit it. Okay, close enough. Listen, ladies, don't forget June the 11th, Franklin Park, the BAMS Festival. All the people you saw here are going to be performing, plus a whole lot more. SWV is going to be in the building, closing out the show on one of the stages, one of the mini stages. So put it in your calendar, bring the kids. There's something for everybody. We're going to have a good time. The Artdacity series will take a break in June to accommodate the festival. So our next episode will air on Thursday, July the 28th. All right. If you'd like to be the first to learn more about the upcoming BAM Festival events, please visit bamfest.org, bamfest.org, and sign up for our monthly newsletter. We encourage all of you to follow and like us on social media platforms at BAMFest, where you can get all the links to all the guests you saw today. I'm sure they're going to figure out how to post those links right as I say it for all the guests. So I need 2 more followers to get to where I want to be. Just keep that in mind. And that's always the case. Until next time, have a great night and really enjoy it.